Hi everyone, today I'm going to be explaining the timeline and other information for Kowloon Generic Romance. This video is going to be split into a couple of parts all set down below, so feel free to skip around. Throughout the timeline I'll be adding little secrets or meanings that you may have missed. Now I will be covering all the information related to the anime. This means there's going to be a ton of spoilers, so watch at your own risk. But with that out of the way, let's begin. Okay, so the furthest back we can go is with the Hebinuma Group. It's a giant medical corporation that is also working on generic Terra. The machine promised to bring eternal life by storing your memories, which it can do, but the main goal of it is to bring back the dead. Specifically, Mr. Hebinuma, the CEO's dead son. We don't really know the details, but he really wants to bring his dead son back, so generic Terra, a machine built to do that. So construction on it starts. But in the meantime, he decides to adopt someone who looks similar enough to his son with little to no background. And this is where Miyuki comes in. He lives in Kowloon and only has one parent who is sick and dying. He is a perfect choice. So Mr. Hebinuma promises to save his mom if he becomes his son, and of course Miyuki would agree to this. And to show allegiance to Mr. Hebinuma, he gets those crazy tattoos and cuts his tongue. And even though they look scary, there's no real nefariousness there. And like he said, they're a medical corporation, so they make medicine. And one of their products is a cold medication that if you take too much, you get high. And if you take too much, you die. So the group tries to cover it up. But we'll talk about that in a second, because before that, we need to talk about the events in the second walled city of Kowloon. Sakura moves to Kowloon after being transferred by his company. There he meets Kujirai Reiko. This is Kujirai 1, who the anime calls Kujirai B, the original. They talk, they date, they fall in love with each other, learning each other's quirks, taking on parts of each other, and being such a sweet couple. Eventually, Kuro asks Kujirai to marry him. She leaves him hanging, saying she'll answer tomorrow. Later that night, they go to a tea house their friend Gwen works out like they normally do, and take a picture to commemorate Kuro asking her out. But like all tragic love stories, it must come to an end, because the Hebinuma Group is on the move. So around this time, Miyuki's mom dies. He swears vengeance on Mr. Hebinuma for letting it happen by trying to bring back Mr. Hebinuma's dead son without any of his memories. And that's what leads to all his odd behavior in the anime. But because of that, the Hebinuma Group has a third reason to destroy Kowloon. The last of the deadly cold medication is in Kowloon, to cover up the records of Miyuki's birth, and because it's technically an illegal settlement rebuilt on the ruins of the first Kowloon. So they plan to demolish the city. The problem is, Kujirai Reiko does not want to leave Kowloon ever. So she buys some of that deadly cold medication so she can die with the city she loves. And the day after Kuro proposes to her, he finds her lifeless. So on the last day of summer, the second walled city of Kowloon is demolished, along with the life of Kujirai Reiko. This next part is everything that happened in between the demolition of Kowloon and the beginning of the anime. This part is a little iffy, but I put it together to the best of my abilities based on what the anime gave us. And this part is about a 3-year time span. So at some point, the construction of generic Terra is complete. Miyuki and Gwen meet up at some bar outside of Kowloon. They hit it off and start dating and have a genuinely good relationship. Xiaohei grows up and stops being small and cute, thus giving up wearing Lolita fashion. Yaomei has a falling out with her mother and gets a complete cosmetic surgery makeover to become a new person. And Kuro is lost in life without Kujirai 1 by his side. Now, generic Terra was built to generate memories and create new people, because again, it was made to make a replacement for Mr. Hebinuma's dead son. Yet, generic Terra can only store memories, not create them, so it was considered a failure. This is true until Kuro returns to destroyed Kowloon 1 year later. Due to the massive feeling of regret inside of him, generic Terra takes, not builds, a world out of his memory. This creates the second walled city of Kowloon to Electric Boogaloo. This is where the anime takes place. This Kowloon isn't the one everyone knows. Everything is just slightly off of what the true second Kowloon was, except in the eyes of Kuro. To him, this is a perfect recreation of Kowloon because it is a replication from his memories. And the second anything gets added to the subconscious, like this cat house, it instantly gets updated in reality. Now, a bit of time passes here. The Hebinuma Group learns of the new Kowloon and starts investigating the city. That's why they built a clinic and gave out free medical exams. Yaomei randomly runs into the city and decides to live there. This other old guy who was a resident of the other Kowloon moves back in, and the only real people allowed to enter are those with massive regret. This matches Kudo's regret, so they are allowed in. But once you stop regretting and try to move forward, you are no longer allowed in Kowloon. Yaomei had her mom, Miyuki had his mom, Gwen had Miyuki and Kudo, Xiaohei had no longer being cute, the old guy had his dead wife, and of course Kudo had Kujirai 1. Now, the last bit passed over about 2 years. We know this because everything was created 1 year after Kujirai 1's death, and 3 years passed in total. During this time, all the others were finding Kowloon. Kudo was living the summer over and over, with each passing summer Kujirai 2 changing more and more, until the day the anime started. Kudo keeps saying there's something wrong with Kowloon this summer, so we know multiple summers have passed. Yaomei says she's been living in Kowloon for about 6 months, and the show hasn't had 6 months passed yet. And Kudo did say you were just a symbol of Kujirai at first, but you changed this summer. So it was all foreshadowed. But Kujirai 2 meets Kudo at work and falls in love, thus starting the anime. I won't recap all of it, but hit on the important / confusing bits and talk about how they work / how they make sense. So everything begins with Kujirai 2. She goes on a date with Kudo where they do everything that Kujirai 1 did with Kudo when he first arrived. He did this to try to get the new Kujirai to be like Kujirai 1 was. But later on the date, they meet Gwen, the bartender, again, but this time with Kujirai 2. And Gwen says that he's happy he brought his girlfriend again, which they aren't dating. And he's of course referring to Kujirai 1, because he remembers what Kudo remembers him remembering. They leave and it's the next morning. Kujirai wakes up Kudo and he treats her with a big kiss, saying, "Sorry, I thought you were someone else." This is of course referring to Kujirai 1. And she finds that all-important picture of a woman who looks exactly like her on a date with Kudo. The next episode she meets Yaomei, who becomes her closest friend. And then Kujirai 2 realizes she doesn't have any memory of her past. She has no memories of the picture or really anything at all. And we get our first flashback of Kujirai 1, who looks exactly the same as our Kujirai, but sounds and acts like a totally different person, because they are. The Habinuma group opens up a healthcare clinic in Kowloon in order to study the residents of it, because again, they're not technically people. Kujirai 2 keeps doing stuff like Kujirai 1 would do. Then Kudo thinks that she's finally reset to the correct personality, only for it not to be true, so he gets hurt. That's why every single time she does something similar, he'd be devastated a second later. And also because someone who isn't his dead fiancé is acting like his dead fiancé while not being his dead fiancé. And Miyuki meets Kujirai and was delighted to see a dead person alive again, even saying the skin glows and feels like there's even warmth to it. Because again, his goal is to bring back the dead son of Mr. Habinuma for revenge. And this was step 1 into confirming that dead people can be brought back. And he knew she was dead because he had looked at her medical record. That's why he had the creepiest smile on his face, because she was exactly what he planned to do to Mr. Habinuma's son. Miyuki and Gwen are still dating because they fell in love after Kowloon was destroyed. Earlier, the real Gwen visited Kowloon, causing his generic counterpart to disappear. That's why no one knew where he went. Kujirai 2 learns that Kujirai 1 is dead, so she's not just her without memories. And every time Kujirai confronts Kudo, the weather breaks, because the world they're in is a reflection of his mind. So if his mind is in turmoil, so is the world. The wind picks up at dramatic moments, both to make it look more dramatic, and because his head is spinning. The earthquakes become more frequent as the anime goes on, because like the ground in an earthquake, his mind is breaking. The mix of dramatization, world building, and foreshadowing all mixed together for these few moments is just delicious. Miyuki and Gwen continue their investigation of Kowloon because it's weird and they gather clues. They test to see what happens if 2 instances of the same person are in Kowloon, and they learn that their generic counterpart disappears when the real them enter Kowloon, and doesn't come back even if they leave. And like Kudo keeps on getting these messages on computers, like there's an existing item in the same location, do you want to replace it? You can't have 2 files with the same name in the same place. So if 2 of the same people are in Kowloon, the generic gets deleted. And it's all obvious now, but this foreshadowing was just nuts. And though many people know about the past, this new Kowloon itself is a mystery. So even though they know more than us in one regard, they are still missing so much information in another, making it a double-layered mystery. what's going on now and what happened in the past. Both things I've talked about already, but I just love the combination when watching it for the first time. Oh well, after the screening of her mom's old movie was brought up, Yaomi was pulled back into the past, and feeling those strong emotions of her, generic Terra does what it does best and overlays the memories on reality, thus making her appearance change. So even though the world is Kudo's, generic Terra can still impose a different reality on others depending on how strong their emotions are. And then Gwen and Miyuki break up, giving Gwen all the more reason to move to Kowloon, thus leaving 4 permanent and 2 in-and-out people living in Kowloon. Miyuki coins the term generic instead of zirconian for people created from generic Terra. Zirconian is a term made on the internet for fake people created by generic Terra. So the people who are copies are zirconians, but dead people who are not copies of their original are generics. And we learned that if generics or zirconians leave Kowloon, they might straight up disappear. And I mean, this pizza guy couldn't even see Kujirai or the city, and it was such a good moment and reveal. Not to us, the viewers, because we already knew this, but to Yaomi and Kujirai because they didn't. And it also kind of confirms it to us because the Hebinumas could have been lying to us. Yaomi goes to investigate Kowloon in Hong Kong. She learns that everyone knows that Kowloon is destroyed, but there are illusion theories online. And all her money she made in Kowloon disappears, so anything from there doesn't exist once it leaves. So it's all fake. We learned that it was early summer in Kowloon. This is because Kuro guessed the last summer he spent in Kowloon before it was destroyed. He lives that summer repeatedly. And eating food in Kowloon causes you to be swallowed by it and ignore the abnormalities like it being always summer. By consuming the food of generic Terra consumes you. Kujirai 2 can see Kujirai 1's memories through her glasses. This is because, I don't know. This is kind of just to move the plot forward, that's kind of it. On the back of some talismans are some error codes from Kudo telling Kujirai to stay away. Yaomi ate chocolate from outside of Kowloon and regained her memories from outside and became unconsumed by it. They finally figure out that through strong regret, you can see Kowloon. The reason why Xiaohei didn't disappear when the older vision initially entered Kowloon is because Kudo saw Xiaohei as a girl, but when his subconscious was updated with the new information that he was a boy, the generic Xiaohei disappeared because they became the same entity. And once they decided to face their regret, Xiaohei and Yaomi lost their ability to see Kowloon. Then it turns out Mr. Hebinuma has dementia, so all his evil was crazy person talk. And because he has dementia, he forgot his son died and thought that Miyuki was his son. So by being there instead of getting his revenge, Miyuki inadvertently helped Mr. Hebima. Okay, and this is just a quick little thing, but bro said, I can't even delete what he wrote. Like, what is this code? I can code pretty well myself, right? But you don't even have to be good at code to tell that this does nothing. And it was probably written by ChatGPT. He writes a lot of code like this. Oh well, when Kudo realizes that he himself is broken, the world around him also breaks, deleting all Zirconians from Kowloon. But Kujirai 2 is fine. Then after a bit more shaking, Kudo disappears and Kujirai has to find him. After running through a crumbling Kowloon, she falls into water and sees Success, the fish, who then speaks to her and gives her the ability to swim. This part was definitely odd. Sure, it works because the fish is the main character of the ending theme, so we get to see its story unfold as well, but I was taken back a bit when the fish started to talk, I can't lie. Oh well, Success leads her to what I assume is the inside of generic Terra / Kudo's mind, where we learn about all of the past that he talked about before. Then Kudo goes back to Kujirai 1's originally destroyed apartment where he meets himself. This is not his copy, because as we know, they cannot exist at the same time. But this is instead his past. Yeah, like Kudo says, let me off the hook already, will ya? Which means he's holding himself hostage with regret, blaming himself for everything that happened with Kujirai 1. But after reliving that summer, he's finally come to terms with everything. Then Kujirai 2 follows the cat and sees another memory from Kujirai 1, which I personally don't understand. Are they saying she knew all of this would happen? That's like the only bit of this entire anime that I don't get. But that doesn't matter because the fake Kowloon finally fully disappears along with generic Terra itself, leaving behind 2 beings, Kujirai 2 and Success, the fish, because both of them found their absolute selves. Jump cut to the future where Kujirai is working as a travel agent because she has always wanted to travel, and even though this anime is ending, a new relationship is starting, because after 2 years, Kudo finally meets Kujirai 2, thus finally ending the anime. Okay, so two small things I didn't say not to mess with the flow of the explanation. Both are in the last episode. The reason why we saw flashes of other people come and go in Kowloon at the end is because it was the Kowloon of other people's minds, with Miyoki seeing his past and his mom, and the old guy seeing his dead wife. And the only reason why Kujirai was the only one who was not the same was because Kujirai was indecipherable. Kudo never knew what she was thinking, so how could he possibly recreate such a person? So the symbol that was Kujirai evolved summer over summer until she became her own person. And that's the whole story. I think I covered everything pretty well, but if I didn't, let me know what I got wrong, so I can tell you how wrong you are. Kidding, of course. But yeah, that's about it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe if you want. But anyways, I'm Ayanali, and bye-bye.